Okay, I think this is a good starting point. Things are kind of weird right now, but we're just going to work through it. This is dawn of a new day. One-Eyed Jack and the Murder Hornets. So I just set up the new computer, new OBS, updated some drivers. I had to change some settings, etc. And there's been this issue, and this is a common thing, where OBS is crashing and crashing. And I did a lot of tutorials today, and I determined the issue, fixed it. However, I got this weird message that says it has crashed, but it hasn't crashed because we're still here. And I tried this a few minutes ago, and I thought, well, what if I just ignore the notification? Like ignoring a parking ticket. Will it go away? I ignored it, and then I hit OK. I acknowledged it, and then it shut down. So it seems like even though OBS has crashed, quote unquote, it hasn't crashed. It's like a zombie stream. So I'm fine with it if it stays up. I could care less. I'll just put that notification to the side, and I won't deal with it. And I'll take some more tutorials later tonight. But overall, this is progress. This is great progress. We're operational. Streamlabs gave me a refund for their worthless service. OBS over Streamlabs, in case you're wondering. But in addition to that, we're away from choppy streams. There's no gremlins in this computer. It's been fumigated. What's up, ears up? Nama, thank you for joining. But this is just the start of a new era. We're moving into our press club, above ground operations. And the IPR Press Club is going to be the part of this think tank that does fact-finding, investigation, on-the-ground research, and it might also include our PSYOPs department, but our fact-finding groups, our reconnaissance, our spies. And if you want to be a part of that, you just go to ips.monster and join the newsletter. And at some point, I'm going to reissue press passes. But I'm waiting for the tabloid. We have a tabloid that goes along with this that has to be published. And that's what the reporters are sourcing content for, the IPS Insider, which is moving along according to plan. And I've come up with a strategy to fund it for this year, outside of IPS. This has to, because, IPS, this think tank's small. I mean, it's a small group compared to the masses who are immersed in main and alternative media, but that doesn't mean it can't be effective. But for the time being, I am going to have to find other sources of financing this. And publishing is a huge part of it. Publishing, not to mention just doing better at marketing this. But in addition to publishing, there's art. And I've been putting a lot of focus. In fact, my eBay art store, just for the record, has sold more than 1,300 original works of art in the last 2.5 years. 99.9% 5-star rating. Got one negative strike against me because a little art card was lost. I refunded it, 50 cents. But anyway, my point is I've moved a ton of art, and it's been in the red this entire time. Barely breaking even. The expenses of creating and shipping, the time, it wasn't, the math wasn't working until about a month ago. About a month ago, I made a few changes to how I list things, the timing of things, and how I promote them, and I'm getting a lot more traction. Because I used to be able to make a decent living before the earth went flat. No, a lot of things changed. eBay changed. The market changed. Things I couldn't control. But what I have controlled is a maintained a steady output. So even though I wasn't profiting off each piece, I figured, well, it's an investment in marketing at a minimum just to continually keep the art going out there. Because eventually all these buyers will hone in on the same piece, and that's when you get these bid wars. So the last few days have been great because I've actually managed to get it into the black. In addition to that, I have a side gig now. I'm doing, like I said I was going to do. I have a junk hauling business. So it's not that much different from what I used to do. When I worked for various mortuaries, the office of the medical examiner, I spent a number of years of my life transporting corpses, cadavers, dead bodies. And that's a lot more complicated than just picking up some trash and taking it to the dump. Because you have to go through the whole procedures of it all. You have to know all the different hallways and the elevators, service elevators of the hospitals, where to park, all kinds of things. This is relatively easy. And so, yes, I'm doing a bit of junk hauling on the side. So it's kind of right there in my wheelhouse. But aside from that, I want to focus on the tabloid, getting it out there, having a tangible meat-verse presence. And I think it's also going to be groundbreaking in a number of ways, and it's going to be the official rag of the parallel media. You know, mainstream has its newspapers, alternative has X and 4chan, but the media, the group of us who are cognizant of the Psywar and the fakery and don't fall into the political horseshoe, we don't have representation. But what we do have now is a tabloid to represent us. And I'm going to put a lot of mind maps into it, all of the content, these things we talk about every day, even phone calls. It's so easy now to have a part of a podcast transcribed and put into print. The content is always being generated 24/7, not to mention we have years of stuff to go through. You know, I was going through these articles regarding Ye and Black Skinhead, White Lives Matter, and his tirade against Jews and how this all ties into the school shooting today, where the main character is this a black school shooter who was nonetheless racist against blacks, and he's wearing a Burzum shirt, which is the same shirt that Ye took criticism for wearing. This is a shirt representing a band, very controversial black metal band associated with anti-Semitism and murder. So it's all adding up, Metascript-wise. Truman B3000, thanks for joining. Gondola Wish, Lean Dion. Truman says, junk hauling work sounds interesting, finding cool stuff. Yeah, that's one aspect of it, for sure. I just happen to live conveniently close to an indoor landfill dump situation, and it's like a 5-minute drive. So it's very easy for me to schedule things and whatever it is, leaves, yard debris, whatever it happens to be. And it's open 7 days a week, so I kind of just worked it into my schedule. And I have business cards on the way. I had to come up with a theme because there's so many of these companies. And so my theme happens to be one of my sessions has been space junk. And so I'll put some business cards out there if anyone wants to see them. Actually, I think I showed the draft, but I actually have them ordered. I'm waiting for them to arrive so I can get listed on Google and start getting ratings. Joe Santos says, if you get enough junk, you can find metal pieces to weld or screw together, paint, and sell a garden statue for $500. You know, now that you mention that, I've been working on a sculpture. Let me see if I can... This is a work in progress, but I used to take these long walks. And on one such walk, I came across a number of pieces of things. So I've been working on this cyborg penguin. Still a lot of work to go. I have the armature built, so basically the exoskeleton. And then I found this, it's like a red light that you put on the back of your bike if you're on these trails at night. And so that's kind of going into the head. In fact, I think it even has different settings. But it's going to have some functionalities, USB enabled things, but for the most part, that's a prototype for what will be in the future. Likely something a little more useful than just a sculpture. I have some ideas, but we'll get to that when the time comes. But I'm always on the lookout for things that I can turn into. I used to do a lot of sculpture work. I was obsessed with cyborgs. I had this cyborg arm that I made, and I hung it up on the wall. Everything I've made, though, I've sold. I used to make sculptures all the time, sell them on eBay. Gondola wishes psyoping and picking, maybe get your own TV show, a cross between InfoWars and American Pickers. Interesting. And something else, too. The art that I'm doing right now, and I'll be introducing this stuff here soon, and I'll be doing it live. I'm doing some live mind maps. And so it's like, for example, the Joker, Luigi, Riddler connection to all these various shootings, the Stranger Things characters and their overlaps with various mass shooters. I'd like to put all these together into works of art that turn it into something of a conversation piece and show unequivocally the connections that we're always talking about. I have one specifically on the numbers 9/11, 119, affiliated PSYOPs directors and various symbols attached to it. But yes, I'm going to manufacture a bunch of cyborg penguins. And the object here is a 3D printable, not animatronics necessarily, but 3D printable cyborg penguins with the blue titanium wrenches that can be used for stop motion animation. I don't know if you've seen it. I'll make sure you get the link here. One-Eyed Jack and the Murder Hornets. Dawn of a New Day. This entire animation was done with Sora. So it's all driven, it's text to video, along with other elements that I've added in here. But this was text to video, my first time using it. I mean, I've been experimenting. I've been working on a animated storyboard for Penguinati. And as I've been, working on that, I've just been fleshing out the story, the details, and it's ready to produce. And it's meant to be an animation at some point, a feature. But in the meantime, I just needed some practice, and One-Eyed Jack hit me up to do this. And I put a lot of time into this one, and I learned quite a bit, and now I'm confident that we could do feature-length animations. So it's just a matter of time, really. I might not even wait that long before I get started, but I knew, about a year ago when I wrote the script, and I mind mapped it out, I knew it wasn't producible right away. I didn't have the resources to attract animators, but now it's not necessary. Now I can do everything that I was going to have to outsource, and I can do it myself, or I can do it close enough to where the storyboard will attract talent. It will attract real animators. Not that I'm not a real animator, but there's a qualitative difference. I mean, I can do editing, animation, but for this particular project, it has to be consistent. There's some things that I need to learn how to do a little bit better. Okay, so let's see here. Just kind of, I didn't invite anybody. I didn't send out live stream notifications because we're in the process of updating everything, and I didn't want to invite people and have it crash. It's kind of a zombie stream right now, as I was saying. So let's go through the points of interest, and then we'll go from there. Now, I've got some strange news, like really strange. I kind of don't want to get into, but it's relevant. And it has to do with the longtime adversary of this channel, MGTV. So MGTV was this individual who was committed to shutting us down. And we must have burned through more than, how many did we lost count? We're having our channels consistently shut down by this person. Anyway, this person went to work for the Trump administration and is a very popular QAnon person who's been anonymous this entire time. But he's caught up in this lawsuit that involves hacking, and the DOJ is looking into him. He's being investigated. All I know is he's been hanging out in New Zealand waiting for Trump to get back into the office. Now, what's interesting here is there's this other character associated with this hacker group, Marco Polo. And, I've been talking about his affiliation with Ziegler and why this matters to our particular case. But there's this other character that he has been writing about on his website named Mark De Giovanni. So I followed the story, this Mark De Giovanni, and how he's got this thing called Quad S, designated travel risk. So he's a designated travel risk because of his work with Marco Polo. He's been labeled a domestic terrorist, basically. So there's this whole article about this character who has a LinkedIn page. And so I've seen him before. I've seen his picture. And all I knew was, okay, he's right there working with Goldfinch and Ziegler. He's part of this group and therefore a person of interest. But as I've been looking into this person, I came to suspect that this person doesn't exist. That we're looking at a deep fake, an alias with an AI-generated character to go along with it. And I think I'm right in this because it turns out he's publishing a book, which is some kind of bizarre, obsessed fan fiction based on the diary of Hunter Biden's niece. Real sick stuff. And it's being published next month. So I'm looking into the author, and then I found a slip-up where I think he admitted that he wrote it. So in other words, this is a, a, a fake person, a mask for Marcus Goldfinch, who is now publishing books about the Biden family's lives on Amazon. So it's intriguing for a few reasons. The book is kind of a hit piece on this attorney who's separately suing the guy I'm suing for the same reasons. So things are turning out in our favor as far as this case goes, and this is just another development along the way. And I've looked into it pretty closely, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct. And weirdly, I went through his LinkedIn, and I did a background check based, cursory look, and looking at all these different businesses that he's affiliated with, and no, these are all false leads. It's a complete fake picture. Complete phony. Anyway, side note, but just for the future, as you know, 2025, there's going to be this trial in September of Hunter Biden versus this group that I'm also suing. Well, I'm suing one of its members. And this member has been below the radar, even though he's hugely popular with QAnoners and he's in the White House press corps. So I've been waiting for him to get doxxed. Hasn't happened yet. But it's going to happen. Well, I mean, I've done it. But it hasn't happened officially. When the mainstream gets a hold of the fact, this person, and all he represents and what he's a part of, it's going to blow up. And that's going to help my case. Not to mention, I'm also awaiting a FOIA request, which should be in here pretty soon. I didn't send out notifications plain decoded because I'm not sure how this is going to work. It's my first time turning on OBS on this new computer, and I wanted to be sure that everything was working and that it wasn't going to cut off. So far, it told me it crashed, but it hasn't. But if I were to go to that box and click OK, it would shut down. So tonight I'll figure out how that works. But nothing but progress here. The think tank is back in full operation. And who knows? I mean, I'm open to the idea of bringing back the 24/7. That was a great way to recruit, so to speak. A big draw, 24/7, and there's just so much content. And I have some ideas to put into practice here. So let's just continue here. We're going through the points of interest. That one, admittedly, would be boring to people who aren't quite familiar with the channel adversary in this ongoing legal situation. But anyway, let's move on. I'm going to my minds.com/infinite plane society. I feel like it's kind of crawl, walk, run. So right now we're just kind of crawling. By tomorrow we'll be running. I'm just going to skip the walking. Just go straight from crawling to running. So Verk John, ears up. Yeah, I'm fortunate that I was able to find an adequate replacement quickly and not lose any real time. And of course, while I was down, I made use of the time and eBay's back into the red, which is hugely important. So let's get into this really quick. So if you're not familiar with the big news of the day, it's this school shooting in Tennessee. No, I'm sorry, in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a Antioch High School in Nashville, Tennessee. 17-year-old Solomon Henderson. So if you look at him in the picture here, he's wearing a Burzum shirt. And that's the first thing that caught my eye. The last shooter we talked about had a KMFDM. So these are tie-ins. KMFDM ties into Littleton. Audrey Hale referenced Littleton. Similarly, Burzum has some connotations here. So let's go. And you have to consider every one of the pictures that you're shown is intentional. Now, one other point about this particular shooter is it is suggested here that he was inspired by Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens. So these right-wingers. And if you've been listening to me for the last few months, you know I've been talking about this Netflix show called The Madness, and how The Madness is a reference to mind viruses that turn people violent. And that in The Madness, Elon Musk is the basis for the billionaire who is financing the madness, paying for these right-wing Nazis. But not only that, turns out he stole the election. So this is about Musk. Hollywood Reporter even said it was Musk-esque, as I did. So I'm looking at the story develop because in addition to the Musk character, you have a Luigi situation in the CEO shooter, but you have a character named Brother 14, Mark Simon, leader of the Forge, which I said corresponds to America First and Nick Fuentes. And he's kind of visually, he looks like Stu Peters, but Nick Fuentes. And of course he gets killed. And what happened with Nick Fuentes recently? Assassination attempt on his life. Some guy went to his house with a crossbow and a gun, murdered some people. So the story is continuing to reflect in what's happening. So in this case, now we have a character with a manifesto, and his murder is blamed on Nick Fuentes and Candace Owen. Not a coincidence. And there's more on this. But the long and short of it is this. In the madness, the character Brother 14 is a Nick Fuentes, Stu Peters mashup, and it's about mind viruses that cause violence funded by a billionaire who stole the election. So now, I'm looking at that Burzum shirt, and I remember about 6 months ago, there was a controversy because Ye was using Burzum type imagery. People were noticing it. And here he is with the Burzum shirt. Last week, let's see here, a rapper, JPEG Mafia, posted a photo of himself on Instagram with the formerly known Kanye West, but Ye. Metalheads were quick to point out that he was wearing a Burzum shirt. And this was following his apology to the Jewish community. And this particular band is associated, the singer, musician is associated with an anti-Semitic murder. So there's that connection. And then, of course, Ye, you could connect to Candace Owen, who was also the inspiration for the shooter. Because if you remember, Candace Owen and Ye did White Lives Matter. And this is before he went on his tour. And at the time, I was saying there's a great deal of significance to the name West. Because we're looking at Kanye West's world burning. And we're talking about this in the context of Westworld burning, the end of the season, Ye's ceremony for Dawn Day where he burns the house. So we were talking about the symbolism of Ye and the fall of the West. Now, in this manifesto by the shooter, he said here, death to the West. Eternal global totalitarian takeover, death to all my enemies. But he says death to the West. And this is one of the underlying themes that really kind of ties all of these different stories together. So Ye's name has some significance to this bigger picture. Now let's go ahead and continue. Again, his name is Solomon Henderson. Now, I would have said that it was probably real because there's only one death aside from himself, low body count. Not your usual school shooting psyop. However, there's so much narrative attached to this, so much symbolism, it drags Fuentes into it, that I'm leaning towards psyop, even though it has a low body count. And then also, he was streaming it live on Kick. And I did hear a clip, but what I heard sounded real. Like, just to be clear, I don't just flippantly call things fake. I have to have reasons for it. And to me, a low body count doesn't really strike me as a psyop. I mean, for the most part, to be a psyop, there has to be an agenda. There has to be, usually it's a almost immediate response from politicians and some prepackaged narrative. I don't know what more you could expect as far as a prepackaged narrative than naming somebody like Nick Fuentes and naming Candace Owen. Now, again, I was talking about the madness. There's quite a lot in the madness. If you haven't seen it, the main character is basically Don Lemon. The main bad guy billionaire is Musk. Nick Fuentes is the leader of the Forge, which ties into America First. You have Lauren Jennings, who's based on Laura Loomer. And then you have this Antifa-like group making these 3D printed guns, and it's all about the working class versus the elite. And when the billionaire gets assassinated, it's considered a good thing because they're stopping the madness. They're stopping this guy from financing all the hate speech online. So it's essentially propaganda 100%. But one of the main components to it that I've been pointing out is that how every single character relates to somebody in the real world. And I called it out as Musk way before the Hollywood Reporter, and even before people were suggesting that he had stolen the election, rigged the election, even before he was doing the Sig Heil at the presidential podium. Not a coincidence. None of this is. This is scripted. And we talked about this a bit last night. I don't know if I uploaded it because the sound was terrible. I had the wrong mic on. But we were talking about characters. Like, okay, we understand crisis actors. They play a role. They smile for the camera. They get their payday. They're gone. But there are some actors that never go away. And their roles are more extensive. Well, what is the purpose of a crisis actor? It's within the context of a simulated news event. This is how they bend history. They control the narratives. They fake events predictably. I mean, you can't instigate things and control the outcome the way you can control a simulation. So we live in a simulation-driven news cycle that becomes our history over time. They're manufacturing history. But in order to drive it, there has to be the entertainment component. Musk is always talking about how the most entertaining outcome's the most likely, how it's entertaining that space junk almost took down a plane. The PSYOP entertainment complex is how the power elite control us all by worldview warfare, waged through media and entertainment, that creates our consolidated worldview that keeps us in our neat little boxes, our internalized Truman shows. It works well. And in this context, you have some individuals who are real. They breathe, they bleed, or they fake bleed, Donald Trump. But what they're essentially doing is they're crisis acting every day. They're playing a role on the world stage. So it's a real person, but who is writing their scripts? Well, this is where we get into the realm of, I guess, well, it's not even a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy fact, where we can talk about the programmers and the programmed and the structure of it all. But we're talking about the invisible government, as Edward Bernays described it, the hidden influencers who are behind this use of media, public relations, and perception management as a form of mass mind control. It's like a new iteration of religion, far more totalitarian, and it's way more effective, and it's also invisible. It's actually incredible. The Truman Show is magnificent. And it's entertaining. Wayne Dion says, weird new character, the manifesto is ridiculous. Yeah, I read his manifesto. You can't read it online. I mean, I would say it's probably going to drag Ye into the conversation. But it's a manifesto that is anti-black, but it's a black person. And he uses all kinds of 4chan language and stereotypes, and it sounds fake to me. The only way you would have such a outlook on life is if your entire frame of reference was Nick Fuentes and 4chan. So I'm not buying it. I don't find it the least bit believable. But it's curious because, we had talked about the significance of Ye and the fall of the West. We've been talking about this for some time, and how one of the things that had me looking at this White Lives Matter thing so closely was he had previously released a track called Black Skinhead, and it was Black KKK Skinhead. And then he shows up on InfoWars with like a black hood on. So I thought, there's something to this. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but it's notable that you have someone like Candace Owens who says things and get away with saying things that, if uttered by a white male, would be called sexist and racist. But she has cover. So I feel like there's a lot of sort of like I don't know if it's a diffusion tactic, but for some reason, for example, Ye saying these things isn't as offensive because he's not white. He can't be a white supremacist, even though he espouses these things. Or Musk doing Sig Heil, Roman salute, Hail Hitler stuff, that's fine. Because he's a memester. He's joking. So it's kind of strange how they're simultaneously able to convey something and then also nullify it. Very, very perplexing. I mean, I'm getting cognitive dissonance from it. Robots that bleed. Trauma mannequins. Let me go ahead and go over this really quick. We still have about 20 minutes. But we'll be longer tomorrow. I'll send out notifications. I will upload this one tonight. So we're back on track. I received a comment from Punk Mom 08. She said, "You saw robots that bleed. Do you have any pictures?" And I know I had talked about simulation dummies at some point, and I think it's important to keep up with the tricks and the tactics of the PSYOP entertainment complex. Like if they ever figure out how to get their actors to cry on cue, we're screwed. Because you won't be able to see through these things the better they get. The special effects are improving. So we have to keep up with it. They've got robots that bleed, robots that cry. They got robots that give birth. So here's something to keep note of. So let's say you're watching something on the news and some guy gets stabbed and his arm is all mangled and waving around for the cameras. It's probably fake. There are wearable bleeding limbs. The hemorrhage control arm trainer is affordable. The affordable hemorrhage control arm trainer P102 by 3B Scientific features a, quote, manual blood pump system simulating venous or arterial pulsatile blood hemorrhage from Anatomy Warehouse. Next, we have a half-corpse simulation. That's crazy. It looks like honestly, it looks real, so I have to scroll past it. It says the use of it is simulation of war's cruelty. This can cause a huge impact on trainees' sense and psychology and can improve their adaptability to deal with emergencies. Includes, quote, detached eyeball and scattered intestines at no additional charge. That's anatomywarehouse.com. Now we have Hell, hyper-real robot that cries and bleeds. Inside of Hell is a combo mechanical pneumatic system that makes him breathe. There's a cartridge in his leg that allows him to exhale CO2. Hydraulic systems provide fake blood and tears. Servo motors tug on his face so he looks angry or scared. He even speaks with a repertoire that includes shouting for his mother and telling you not to touch him. If you like, you can speak through the robot with the system that turns your voice into that of a 5-year-old. So you can simulate the voice of a traumatized 5-year-old by speaking through it, and it'll alter your voice. That's from Wired.com. Next, let's have a look at the George Floyd model from 7 Sigma Simulation Systems. Interesting backstory. 7 Sigma was in the Twin Cities. They had been there since 1987. So this company, this warehouse that manufactures these hyper-realistic training dolls that bleed and speak and have all these different like functions. You can even custom make these things. They can look like anybody. So that company had been there for 33 years. Anyone care to guess what the first building burned down by BLM was in the riots of 2020? That building. The warehouse that manufactured the George Floyd dummy that they were kneeling on was the first thing to burn down. Again, 7 Sigma Simulation Systems. Look into it. He also comes in white. I mean, these are so realistic, they could fool a camera. Here's a comprehensive tourniquet application training simulator. It's a wearable device. So this is a series of squibs connected by tubes on the arm. So you can test the efficacy of your tourniquet. So it's bleeding. They fix it. Smart dummies. So here's the dummy that gives birth. Now, if you want to watch these videos, I'll put a link. It's timosmond.substack. It's my blog. Talking mannequins. Talking mannequin, lifelike, used in hospital drills. Scarily realistic. They're called SAMs. I think it's simulation, anatomy, mannequin or something. The SAMs, realism, is so realistic. It has dead tissue that can be removed, and the surgeons can practice exploratory surgery. It bleeds, including arterial bleeding. Now, in summary, the purpose of keeping up with the latest developments in casualty simulations is that we're not going to be foolable when they use these to enhance the believability of their atrocity propaganda. These training dummies are conscripted as props in the Psy-War. And unlike living crisis actors, they don't smile at the cameras. And this was very important 10/7. I was looking at this row of dead babies like sardines, and I'm like, look, their mouths are all closed, their eyes are closed, and for having been blown up by bombs, they're relatively intact. What kind of bomb can you drop on a baby that doesn't mangle it, but kills it? Like, I'm sorry, it's like these are obviously dummies. And I called this out, and I was talking about how the eyes wouldn't be closed, and then the next day they bring out this really corny looking fake rubber doll that I think even some of the newspapers called it fake, just waving it in front of the camera as they do. Now, on a related note, this is an inflatable tank. According to The Economist, Ukraine used these to trick the Russians. That's what we're told. They use inflatable tanks, inflatable rocket launchers to trick the Russians because the Russians don't read newspapers and they can't read, oh, look, on the front page, they're fooling us with these inflatables. That's the big ruse. The truth is, the fakery is used on both sides. They're not fooling each other. They're fooling the cameras so they can fool you. It's not one side against the other, but it's the military controlled by the PSYOP entertainment complex, the same controllers. It's all part of the same show, but it's to fool the masses. So if you want to go through these, and I misspelled mannequin. Well, mannequin is spelled Quuins, mannequins, only if it's for clothing, but if it's for training simulations, it's with a K. So I did misspell it here. But again, this article must read robots that bleed, trauma mannequins. Okay, let's see what we got here. Going through your comments. I'll send out live notifications tomorrow, by the way. The Commanders haven't been in the playoffs in 33 years, and their backup quarterback is Marcus Mariota at 33, like Mary Magdalene, says Joe Santo. Interesting. Yeah, that Minneapolis, they definitely peacefully torched. It was a peaceful torching of that business. But why would they burn down a warehouse that manufactures these training things? Nothing about that was organic. Of course, the AutoZone was the first one we saw on camera. The guy with the umbrella. Interesting story. The autonomous zone, the Chaz. I'm hoping 2025 turns out to be as entertaining as 2020 was. In fact, I've seen some rhetoric comparing LA to a nuke. There's a new fire. They said it's going to go nuclear. And this all comports with Homestead, as we had said last year. At the end of the year, we said, watch Los Angeles. According to Homestead, they're going to get nuked. Okay, going through my notes here. The alleged manifesto of the Nashville shooter includes an FAQ. Calls himself the last true Rhodesian. Bunch of 4chan stuff. Ethan, Ralph, and Nick Fuentes are named as the inspiration for the shooter. So I don't know who Ethan Ralph is, but I also noted that he had named Candace Owen, and this is all very significant. A lot of the JFK worshippers are going nuts because they believe Trump is JFK. And the last president to take the presidential oath of office without the hand on the Bible was JFK. So they're reading a lot into this. A lot of people are reading a lot into Melania Trump's hat also. And I think the hat is a reference to Saturn. I think it's all Saturnian. Ties into the golden age stuff that you keep hearing about. This golden age. President Trump says, immediately Stargate will be building the physical and virtual infrastructure to power the next generation of advancements in AI, including the construction of colossal data centers. So Stargate is an interesting thing to mention. A lot of connotations here, especially if you go into SpaceX, Jack Parsons, and the meaning behind the Babylon working and what Stargates mean in that context. We're talking about portals. And specifically, though, here it's about AI, which tying these things together, very intriguing. Now listen to this. This is why I keep mentioning the madness. So one of the main things in the madness is that this billionaire is not only financing all these racists online, but he stole the election. That's the story. the main story is he stole the election and brought about this madness. So Elon Musk and his role in the 2024 election interference, there are a number of people who are saying this stuff. It says, when Musk took over, everything changed. What started as a social media company became much darker. I was part of a team directly ordered to manipulate Twitter's system to influence the 2024 presidential election. It was not subtle. It was not ethical. I can't reveal my identity without risking everything. So a former ex-whistleblower is claiming that they did this. Now, I don't care. I don't know. But it perfectly comports with what we have said about the madness. And I've been talking about the madness for some time. And as time passes, more of it is coming true because life follows Netflix, apparently. All right, we had a sort of a talk yesterday about Billy Ray Cyrus looking like Rob Zombie. I guess we can get into this stuff tomorrow. I do want to just kind of test out the sound in the video, so I'm kind of scrolling around to see if there's any glitchiness and any sort of gremlin activity, and it seems to be fine. Now, the ADL came out to talk about Elon Musk doing the Sig Heil salute. And here's what the ADL said. And I think this is revealing. This is a delicate moment. It's a new day. Many are on edge. Our politics are inflamed, and social media adds to the anxiety. Elon Musk made an awkward gesture in a moment of enthusiasm. Not a Nazi salute, but we appreciate that people are on edge. So that's not one. What about the second time he did it? And I think I got a link from Fakeologist to Vox Populi, who's insisting that this is some kind of stab in the back against Trump, that it's a troll. And there might be something to it. It was compared to something that was done after 2016 by like Robert Spencer, I believe. They had a similar controversy. Now, do you all remember I talked about Witsit Spitsit? I said, forget about Vapegate. Look at Witsit Spitsit. Well, McToon has taken that hashtag and he's created this video. It's a collection of Witsit Spitsit mugshot trading cards. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of these things. And some of the stuff's pretty ominous. But again, Witsit mugshot trading card set, you won't believe what's missing. This guy actually spent, days in a tent with that guy?
Trading card set for the Austin Witsit mugshots. You might not. Now let's review, and some of the details might be a little incorrect, so be sure to let me know if you have any updates to the details. mctoon at mctoon.net. Anyway, we've got 2015 assault, but there's no mugshot. So if you
okay, no mugshot on that one, but he goes through a list here of trading cards, and I think the more recent one was the one with the spitting. But some of the stuff gets pretty dark.
I'm told shoplifting. And now we've got 2021, some drugs issue when he was in Key West. Of course, nobody could forget the arrest from when he was at.
Okay, we're scrolling through these mugshot trading cards. The most recent one, though, is Witsit Spitsit. I just wanted to point out they stole my hashtag. I'm not mad about it. I mean, they use it appropriately. Pretty bad stuff. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But I've just picked up on a pattern here. There's some kind of a pattern. It has to do with influencers who are propped up, who seem to have various run-ins with the legal system that puts them in a position of possibly being compromised. And no one has yet figured out, at least I haven't had any information, on what happened to the money that he was raising to audit NASA before he disappeared for a time. But anyway, Witsit mugshot trading card sets. I'm not going to go to the end of the video. I recommend it if you want to watch it yourself, because there's some pretty ominous stuff there. Salty says, I'm sick of fake everything. Yeah, it's really remarkable. I mean, I'm in awe of the bread and circuses. Lee and ADL are usually savage. Yeah, what I don't get here is why do they give him a pass? I mean, admittedly, they said this in the past, Musk is the leading source of hate on the internet. You know, he's the guy he's disease X. He opened the floodgates, allowed these individuals like Nick Fuentes onto the platform. And so now he's dog whistling in a very overt way. All of his rhetoric is very consistent. If you read his rhetoric, what he believes in, the memes he retweets, the accounts he associates with, and they've even shown that he has directly interacted on Twitter with very specific influencers in that realm. Just like the movie. I'm saying this is just like the movie character. So it's just, to me, it's on brand for him to throw that salute out. And the fact that the ADL gives him a pass is really weird. I mean, it really is. They flipped out over bowl cuts and the AOK symbol. But this is okay. So it's worse than a double standard. I don't know if it's disingenuous. I'm not really sure how to categorize it, but no. It's like, don't believe your lying eyes, I guess. Lean Dion says, if there's a crime, Austin commits it. Yeah, it's pretty bleak when you look at these various individuals who are propped up to represent this topic. It's like, why do they all have to have these backgrounds? Because I'll tell you what, if I was going to do something representing a group of people, like, hey, I'm going to go to the South Pole, and I had something bad in my past, I would probably not want to go, because that could obviously be used to discredit the mission. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. Does it discredit him as a witness? I would say so. It suggests something. Like, for one thing, we know he's capable of lying. We know he's capable of worse. So why do we have to treat his eyewitness as unimpeachable? And again, we don't know what happened with all that money they were raising to audit NASA. It didn't happen. All right, let's see what else we have here. Not much time left. Okay, here's the mother of the Antichrist from the Omen. Is this the mother, or this is the Satanist who's like watching over the Antichrist? Damian Thorne, Donald Trump, DT. Lots of connections here, but many are comparing Melania Trump to that. Others have compared her to the Hamburglar, which comports with Donald Trump at McDonald's in some weird way. But there's been this hyper-analysis of Melania Trump's wardrobe. Okay, let's see here. I got this comment from Conscious Daughter. Hey, Tim, have you talked about Trump wanting to purchase Greenland? Weird news, because everyone is discussing the flat earth, ice walls, hidden lands. I've always wondered why Greenland was called Greenland. Yeah, we need to talk about this as well. I've said before that we need to treat the maps as suspect as we treat the fake news. Like, they fake everything. You think they're going to be objective about the one thing that actually matters? Real estate? No. Okay, main story tonight. Shooter in Tennessee. And listen to this. This is his own FAQ. This is like insane. This is the guy's FAQ. Thoughts on Europeans. Thoughts on black people. Is there a particular group of people that radicalize you the most? Candace Owens, Ethan Ralph, Nick Fuentes. To expand on this, Candace Owens has influenced me above all. Each time she spoke, I was stunned by her insights and her views. She helped push me further and further into the belief that violence over the Jewish question, along with Turkey Tom, pushed me into the alt-right pipeline. He's so insightful about how he got there. We're taught violence and extremism by video games, music, literature, and cinema. Following music called incel core and shooter core taught me to kill. Kanye West. And playing games like Manhunt City, Postal Doom have mentally prepared me for murder. Now, I didn't know he was going to mention Kanye West. Yet, I inferred from the shirt Burzum and his mention of the death of the West that it would drag Kanye West into it. I said this earlier tonight. So what I'm pointing out here is the internal consistency of our analysis when we look at these events as part of a bigger story and all interconnected. Was this written by ChatGPT? Says Gondola. I know. That's what I'm saying. This is. It's like a character they made up for a drill. That's what it sounds like to me. You know, like, hey, you're this character. Answer these questions, or I mean, it's just like Scooby Doo justice. Like I said before, if it's a real murder, a real event, you're not going to get all the details because there's witnesses. They're all minors. It's talking about a high school, and yet we know why he did it, who inspired him, what we need to do about it politically and socially. It has an agenda attached to it. That's how I'm saying it's fake. Verkjun says she also looks like the Hat Man or a Korean Mudang, a sort of female shaman fortune teller. I'm talking about Melania. I think it's tied into Saturn and the Golden Age. I think that's really the main thing. And in Megalopolis, which we talk about a bit, and I'll talk about it some more tomorrow because it ties into the Elvis thing with Trump and Melania facing Elvis. But anyway, Saturn's mythological reign was depicted as a golden age of abundance and peace. And at that movie Megalopolis, when they confront Elvis and he's singing Trump's inauguration song, America the Beautiful, and wrapped in a flag, it's at a Saturnalia ceremony, festival. So they're celebrating Saturnalia. The main character is based on Trump. He's Caesar. So Hail Caesar kind of makes sense in that context. But in that movie, you have these characters called the Design Authority. These are like the secret rulers. And they all have the Melania hats, the black-brimmed hats. They look like the strangers from Dark City, which is what I think they're based on. Gondola says, most 17-year-olds have a hard time writing a college essay for admission, let alone a manifesto. Yeah, no doubt. Especially one so insightful. I mean, we've had a lot of manifestos recently. Maxwell Azrello's manifesto. He actually talked about history being bent, which is something we talk about, which is strange. Plain Dakota says this will be forgot by tomorrow. I don't know. I think this is going to drag Ye into the situation and Fuentes. No way this is going away. This story kind of crept up on me. I missed it. It was like 3 hours before I heard about it. I ignored it because of the low body count. But then I saw the Burzum shirt, and I instantly thought, Ye. And look what we found in his manifesto, a reference to Ye. So this is following along a predictable storyline. We'll continue this tomorrow. I have to go run some errands, but I'm glad this worked. I was a little worried that this wasn't going to work out, but apparently it's working out just fine. So I'll be running a few more tests. I'll be doing a few more tutorials, but I will send out live stream notifications on the next one. Thanks for all your comments, and have a great evening. This is Auto Hoaxology by Symbia. And I'm going to put links to everything, as usual, at minds.com/Infinite Plane Society. And I'll put all my notes together on this latest shooting and how I think it may tie in to the incoming agenda, because it ties in Ye, Candace Owens, the alt-right propaganda networks, plus it also brings into the picture, I think, the madness more than any other movie we've seen. So anyway, have a great night.
Stepped away from the game entirely. I won't be caught up in their lame dichotomy. I step the backs of deceivers, demanding burdens, further proof from all the hacks and believers. I stepped away from the game entirely. I won't be caught up in the lame dichotomy. I stepped away from the cage entirely. I'm free today and my mind's been saved by reading autohoaxology. Out of the control system finally. I know where to go if you follow me. Cause I've been reading autohoaxology. Nothing can bother me. Autohoaxology. Won't put the screen before it's blasphemy. I won't become another mind war casualty. I came up out the realm of possibility to take the helm of this reality. Cause I've been chillin' reading autohoaxology. Suspending all the judgment you